Um, Hello.
Hello.
Oh, uh, oh, fucking hell! This is nerve-wracking, isn't it? um, we don't know what this uh, podcast is called. Um, I've got a few ideas for some names um, that I could throw out. I tell you what, should I sort of explain what the sort of ethos of the show is?
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is a sort of music podcast that me and Dan are doing, and the idea is that we've known each other for a long time, but we both have quite different music tastes. So Dan being more into what would you say your sort of musical tastes are, Dan?
It's an interesting one because I was always kind of raised on heavy metal, and kind of at school I kind of thought that that was the one box that I fit into.
All right.
and
Yeah.
and I always liked it, but I never really loved it. And I never there were people at school that loved music, and I was, well, I'm more into film really, but I don't know, I could just never get really into music. But then when I started to listen to some other stuff, kind of, I don't know, more indie rock, pop, dance, electronic, I kind of started to really get into music. I actually think it was the Smiths, probably, when another school friend of ours, James, went on about them for years, and I never really paid attention. But then I finally did, and something clicked, and it really inspired me. So then I got quite fanatical about stuff. I started to, take notice of albums for the first time, and discographies, and just all the influences, and kind of go off in different directions. So sorry, that's a rather long-winded
No, that's cool, man. That's
explanation.
Cool.
But I don't know. I suppose nowadays I listen more to indie stuff, or post-punk, you might call it, stuff which is kind of inspired by the punk movement of the late 70s, but is perhaps a bit more current, or a bit more tuneful, or
So what kind of
experimental.
what kind of bands would you cite as being an example of that?
Post-punk, well, I guess something like Public Image Limited, which is the band that Johnny Rotten formed after being in the Sex Pistols.
It'd be like The Cure, right?
And yeah, The Cure fits into it. Yeah. Stuff like, Scritti Politti is a very interesting one, that started off as a very kind of left-wing punk band, then just suddenly decided to go into, I don't know, Michael Jackson sounding R&B kind of music, but still had the kind of the messages there, but made very danceable music.
I've never heard of Scritti Politti.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, because the name is supposed to be a play on this Italian essay written by this Marxist called somebody Gramsci, and it was Scritti Politici, which is political writings, and it was supposed to be this idea of getting these Marxist ideas out. How do you get them to a wide audience? You kind of fight through genre and stuff, and make it accessible to people, to the masses,
through Twitter.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where the name comes from.
Cool, I'll check them out. So what were we talking about again? The Squiffy Wivvy or whatever that band.
Squiffy Whiffy, Tutti Frutti, Squitti Politti.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're bored of them now. We talked about them.
Yeah.
Well. Okay. So, assuming that we're going to use the intro that we made already, I guess I'll start sort of saying the reason why you were probably listening to a lot of metal and hard rock and that kind of stuff at that time was probably because of me.
It was.
Yeah, just sort of, like a lot of the metal bands that were popular at the time, and stuff like Metallica and Iron Maiden, and the stuff that 16-year-olds can't really get away from and that sort of developed into an interest of prog and prog metal, and a lot of the more kind of like just a lot of the more kind of like heavier stuff recently, you know, really. And no expert, but like I've also got a knowledge of stuff like J-pop and like video game soundtracks and stuff like that as well. So and like chiptune music and stuff. So I think like between us, I think we cover quite a varied range of genres. And so this podcast was kind of set up as a way for each of us to recommend albums that the other person might not have heard, or just might not be the kind of thing they're used to listening to, even if they've heard of the musical project in question, and just nailing down their thoughts on it and things, and you know, just trying to you know, see what their thoughts are on it. So I suppose we're going to start with do you want me to go first, talking about Green Lawn?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, let's have a look at my notes here. Green Lawn, and the album is called The Black Harvest, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like this album. I thought it was quite a surprise. I did a bit of research on the band beforehand, and typically doom and stoner metal is not my kind of thing. I don't dislike it, and of course I like bands like Black Sabbath, who were a massive influence on that kind of sound. But I think there are a lot of repeating tropes through the genre, and often it's kind of like heard one, heard them all kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I dug this album quite a lot. Things I liked, songwriting. I thought a lot of it was reminiscent. A lot of it to me was quite reminiscent of Ghost, who were a new band who you might have heard of, and stuff like Blue Oyster Cult as well. There were some really great instrumental sections that were widdly without being too without just meandering off into just like windy blues solos that don't really go anywhere. Yeah, catchy riffs. I particularly like the song Doomsayer. Great musicianship. I would listen to this album again. I would check out more from this band. Dislikes. Not many, to be honest.
Okay.
But I put down here the lyrics, and that's another thing with lyrics for like doom metal bands, is that they're either you know, it's either stuff like My Dying Bride, when it's just sort of like, oh, let me die in the shadows, and like, you know, that kind of stuff, and it's just miserable, or it's sort of like you know, kind of like whoa, I met the wizard and he gave me a spliff, you know, like that kind of thing, like,
or he will come forth for your soul, and that kind of thing.
That kind of thing. Yeah. Oh, I'm a pagan. Let's dance around the shrines, and oh, what do these runes say? And like that kind of thing. Like it's sort of like typical, just pagan, like pseudo pagan nonsense. That, you know, this album didn't particularly escape from. I quite liked Leaders of the Blind, and there's a sort of message there about corruption and abuse of power. I thought it was a pleasant surprise. Not usually my kind of thing, but I liked it. I liked it a lot. I would give it a 7 out of 10. This album, and so yeah. So those are my thoughts. Where did you hear about this band? And
Well,
you said you saw them live, didn't you?
yeah. So I went to this festival a couple of weeks ago in Wales. It's called
Hmm.
Steelhouse Festival. It's on top of a mountain at a place called Ebervale, and it's a classic
Ooh.
rock festival. I guess the new wave of classic rock, which, I mean, I'm no expert, but it kind of crosses into the metal genre a bit, but also
Yeah.
other stuff like, well, I don't know, Saxon, whatever they are, and
New wave
Uriah
British
Heep,
heavy
and
metal.
a bit of prog, a bit of everything, I suppose.
Okay, sounds like a very kind of like old man,
It is. It is a very
like
kind of
sort of dad,
white old
you're,
man festival. Yeah, and
yeah, the kind of festival that a Saxondale would go to.
yes, pretty much. I'll tell you who was there
Yeah.
this year. You may have
Oh
heard
yeah.
of Graham Bonnet from Rainbow.
Yes.
Yeah, so he was there. Proper OAP now. Um, probably pushing 80.
Yeah, but
And
still,
yeah, and
did
then
he
Saxon.
still give it give it his all?
He did actually. I was surprised because he came on, and I kind of thought, "Oh, what's this going to be like? It's going to be like,
Yeah.
angry old man rants into a microphone." But actually, he did, "Since You've Been Gone," that famous one, and his voice was really good
Since you've
actually.
been gone.
Yeah,
So,
since
yeah.
since you've been gone, where did you go?
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
right here. I'm right here, Grandad.
yeah, and there was somebody again, like my dad and brother absolutely love this stuff, and I was there, I was
Hmm.
liking it because I don't know, I like the stuff, and but stuff like Diamond Head, who I think I'd heard of but never listened
Yeah,
to, they were quite good. Orange Goblin, who I'd heard the name of, I always thought that was quite an
yeah.
interesting name for some reason, but they were quite
Well,
good.
they're another they're kind of in the same ballpark as Greenlung.
Yeah,
The same kind of music, really.
yeah. And so the headliners are always these, really well-known old man bands. Some of them, actually, you kind of think should be perhaps giving it up now. Like I remember you telling me about Judas Priest,
Mhm.
seeing them, and how they were
Oh
kind of.
yeah.
So
Well,
this year it
don't
was
tell anyone I said that.
no.
Well,
Oh, we can
but
edit that bit
there
out.
were
Yeah.
obviously, yeah. Well, it's fine, isn't it? But like I remember people in the audience were really into it, and I
Yeah.
was just sort of thinking, oh bloody hell! Like these guys, like I love Judas Priest, I love Rob
Mm.
Halford, but I was just like, you just need to have a sit down now. Like it's
Yeah.
just kind of it's time to stop like riding about on a motorbike and like wearing all this like leather and chains and
Denim.
stuff. Like it's all right when you're like maybe even like into your 50s and
Mm.
60s, but like it's well past that now. And
Yeah.
when I saw Saxon as well, who I also was not particularly impressed by.
Mm.
Again, don't tell any metal fans that I said that because
Yeah.
it'll make me a poser or whatever.
Sorry, Biff
But
Byford,
yeah,
if you're
like that.
listening.
Yeah, I imagine I imagine he wouldn't be too fond of what some, you know,
Yeah.
pretentious guy who works at a university has to say about like sort of the earth band like Saxon. But
Sorry, is
but
that you
yeah,
or me?
no, that's me.
Oh, right.
That's both of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
um, uh, but what was I talking about? Yeah, they got the drummer could only do two songs, and
Right.
for the rest of the show, they got the drummer's son on stage to do
Oh,
to drum
right.
for the whole set, and it was just sort of like if that doesn't say that it's time to pack it in, I don't know what does really.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, an interesting. Sorry, this is going off on a tangent a bit, but it's an
yeah,
interesting
no
point
problem.
I had because I went to download because my brother couldn't go, and I had to unfortunately go to that for the weekend. The
Oh, you
things you
didn't
do.
enjoy it?
No, I did. No, it was good.
Oh, okay.
No, but
Oh, right. Oh, yes. Sorry, you were joking.
sorry. sarcasm there. Um, and I was having a discussion with some people, and it was kind of like, because all the headliners are all these old bands who've been around for years that people
Yeah.
idolize and who just won't die. And we were kind of like, who, when they're gone, when they finally, stopped and retired, who, is, fit to kind of take over? And I can't really think of any bands who are, really. I mean, there are bands who are established, but I can't think of any who are like, really sort of popular, well known, and iconic that could
Oh, well,
headline a
this
big
is something
festival.
that this is something that yeah, this is the constant sort of discussion,
Yeah.
isn't it, really? But I think there are actually a lot of
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of like new and exciting bands who I think
Yeah.
that the problem is it's just sort of like really heavy music. Like
Mm.
there's there's a band right now called Spirit Box, who
Okay.
are an incredible band. They're like really heavy,
Mm.
and they're sort of establishing quite a large fan base. But it's just that kind of really like heavy music will never have like mass appeal.
No.
And I kind of think that you know maybe your Metallicas and your Iron Maidens, because they don't have like the screaming vocals, they
Mm.
don't have the really like in your face kind of like seven string guitars and like masses of like compressed guitars and that kind of thing.
Mm.
They can still have a bit more of a kind of crossover appeal, like almost like edging on the mainstream kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I think like there are lots of there are lots of bands that like that could be headliners. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know,
I mean,
maybe Avenged Sevenfold,
oh, okay.
Ghost, Five Finger Death Punch, even though I don't particularly like that band. They're very big.
Mm.
But the problem is as well, there's a lot of elitism as well, and like a lot of
Yeah.
kind of you talk to people in like rock and metal circles,
Mm.
and it's kind of like sometimes it's sort of like if you don't listen to anything that isn't like if you listen to Slayer and
Yeah.
like Pantera, you're fine. But if you listen to anything else, you're like fucking poser or whatever. And it's just like
Yeah.
um so like you're seeing it a bit now with the whole Stranger Things Metallica thing,
Mm.
and how like a Metallica song was used in Stranger Things, and you've got a lot of like new younger fans sort of discovering this this music and thinking, oh, it's like, oh, this is really good or whatever, and then
Mm.
you get the immediate pushback of like, keep your fucking grubby fingers out of my metal music.
Oh, I
And
see. You can't like it because you've
and
heard it
it's
on a
sort of
TV
like, yeah,
series.
yeah, exactly, yeah, as if like as if they didn't listen to it for the first time through you know MTV or whatever.
Mm.
Uh but yeah, I think there are like, when it comes to that point where these really old dudes who are in all these old bands, they are like, you know, dead,
Yeah.
um, or to the point where they can't perform anymore.
Mm.
I personally think there are like plenty of like bands that could sort of take that place and have like,
Yeah.
and appeal to that kind of crowd. Um, Alter Bridge as well, maybe. And
Oh, yeah. Alter Bridge. Yeah.
they they played in the O2 Arena. They had a
Mm.
massive audience. Slipknot, I know they're not,
Yeah.
uh, you know, I know like a lot of the bands that I'm listing are not new, but they're kind
No.
of like, they're not as old as fucking Rainbow, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well,
so yeah, I think when it comes to that, there will be some bands out there that can take that place, but
yeah. I mean, I
love you, Rob.
suggested, oh, Rammstein, and then
Oh
someone told
yeah,
me,
yeah.
oh, they're a bit too obscure. But I thought, oh, well, they
Yeah,
seem.
but I don't think they are. Like,
No. Um, there's Airborne, I suppose. That would be that would make the AC/DC
Yeah,
fans happy, I suppose.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, they all are almost kind of. I tell you what, Ramstein aren't obscure. They were in Triple X.
Oh, what, the Vin Diesel film?
Yeah,
Oh, right.
that's where I first heard of them. They were
Oh,
in they Triple X, Vin Diesel, the new breed of secret agent,
oh
and the
yes.
opening scene is set to a Rammstein song.
Oh, right. Wow.
And I that film has gone on to be a really enduring film, which I'm sure will just, that hasn't dated in the slightest. And I'm sure that sorry, as a as the Hells Angels go by outside my house, I have to have the windows open because it's so bloody hot.
Mm.
Um, but what was I talking about again? Triple X.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Triple X. Yeah.
I was being a sarcastic cunt again. Like, I mean, there's too much. We're we're too deadpan sarcastic, Dan. I think
Yeah.
we can't tell if each other is being serious or not
So
when
hang
we
on a minute.
say
You're
something.
saying that Triple X hasn't aged well then?
No, it's
Oh.
brilliant that bit where he does that bit where he ramps off his motocross bike and like grabs the back of it and like kicks his leg out and then
Oh yeah.
shoots a bunch of. Have you seen it? Have you seen Triple X?
I think when I was 12, maybe, when it came out.
Yeah. Well, I last saw it when I was 12, but I tell you what, man, some of
It's
those scenes were
lasted in your
so
memory.
iconic.
Yeah.
It's lasted. Yeah. I mean, uh, yeah. It's Triple X.
Yeah. Now, remind
Check
me,
it
was
out.
that the film that Vin Diesel won the Oscar for, or was that something else, or was that one of the
I
Marvel films?
think no. I think he won the Oscar for the pacifier.
Oh, right, of course. Yes. Sorry, I
Yeah.
always get
Did you
those.
did you ever watch that one where he plays a babysitter?
Do you know, I didn't know, but that's quite a clever
Oh
title,
man,
that, because that's like
it
pacifier,
is.
like a dummy, or pacifier, I suppose, is in someone who tries to diffuse a situation.
Pacify people. Yeah. Oh,
That's
it's just so there's so many layers.
yeah. Oh, I'll have to watch
Triple
that. Yeah,
X, Triple X. I thought I was content with one X, but
yeah,
there
but
was.
oh,
I mean, and there was Triple X two as well with Ice Cube.
so your original question, I think about 30 minutes ago, was how I found this band, Green Lung.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So this festival, which I don't know if you're going to edit this bit out, but yeah, so I went to this festival, and sometimes at these festivals, the lesser known bands are more interesting. They're kind of, the younger bands
Right.
that haven't
Yeah.
had, newer, and it's their first time at a festival. And there's some quite interesting ones there. Green Lung were there, and I kind of thought, the name, I didn't think much of the name, but they played, and there was that song Graveyard Sun, and it was just quite,
Yeah.
sort of quite
That's one I really liked on the
eerie,
album.
eerily beautiful, and it really stuck with me, and I thought, I really took notice of them, because sometimes these bands, they play and you think it's good background music, but you don't necessarily take it in. So they had their vinyl on sale, so I bought it and I listened to it and I thought, oh, this is quite good. And yeah,
So
so
so would you watch them? Would you watch them live again? Would you check out any more by them?
I would actually, yeah,
What
because
made them stand out from the other? Well, you just said the uh, Graveyard Sunrise.
yeah, I think what it was is, it's clearly inspired by Black Sabbath, and there is something quite cinematic about it, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, no,
I
definitely.
can kind of see an influence. I'm reading about it. They seem to be influenced by this film called Witchfinder General. I don't know if you know that Vincent Price
Right,
film,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it
Hammer
just
horror, yeah,
that whole kind of folk thing does remind me of that Hammer horror, Wicker Man kind of, British um, folk countryside horror kind of thing. And I
sure,
think that
yeah.
that really resonated. And actually, looking in the vinyl, the front cover's this really nice, design, stained glass window design, and there's a booklet inside with the
Yeah.
lyrics, and they seem to have labeled the songs as if it was a soundtrack. And I looked at it and thought, oh,
All
is this
right,
actually a? I thought maybe this was actually a soundtrack to a, low budget horror film that I hadn't heard of, but it's not. It's an original album that they've just kind of
right.
tried to give that vibe. And it is clearly influenced by Black Sabbath and I think Deep Purple, and you mentioned some other things as well, like Blue Oyster Cult. But I think
Mm,
they do it really well, and I think sometimes when these bands try and imitate other ones, they fall flat or it's just a carbon copy. But I kind of thought there was enough in there
yeah.
to make it original, and they clearly love the subject matter, and I think they've got a skill and talent for it. And I just kind of thought I could see them going on to, to bigger things.
Yeah, no, I
But
agree.
perhaps if they
I
branch out their
agree.
sound a little bit, um,
Well, I mean, I could see them. I could certainly see them being like a support act for Ghost or something. Like
yeah,
I say, I think it's almost kind of like an in between like Black Sabbath and
yeah,
Orange Goblin, and maybe stuff like Candlemass even,
okay,
and sort of yeah, stuff like Ghost, which is a bit bigger. Um,
okay.
did you want to move on to the next album?
Can do. I think just quickly as well. I really like the voice of the singer as well.
Yes, I
I
did
think
as
that,
well. Actually, that was something I put on my likes,
yeah,
actually. His vocal style. It's kind of like I guess it's almost kind of like an in tune Aussie, isn't it, in a way?
yeah.
Like
Um, and as for the lyrics, I do agree with what you said, but actually, I think because I don't listen to a lot of this stuff, I didn't
hmm.
notice it so much. It almost seemed a bit more novel to me, but I do,
Oh, okay.
get with this genre that they do all talk about these kind of demons and the soul and things like
Yeah,
that. And
and it's all about getting stoned, isn't it? It's sort of
yeah,
like the band name Green Lung. I mean, that's a very obvious allusion to that. I mean, I think maybe there's some
yeah.
sort of other meaning to that.
Oh, I thought it was because
Um,
they were environmentalists, but mm,
oh, okay. Oh, interesting. There's the save the trees. That's what
yeah.
yeah. That's what Doomsday is about. It's about global warming.
Mm.
Um, okay. Yeah. Did you want to move on to
Yeah,
ironically enough, closure continuation?
yeah.
Because it's the closure of that segment and into
Yes,
the
and we're
the
continuing into the next
continuation.
bit. Yeah, that's good.
Yes. The new Porcupine Tree album.
Yeah.
I'm just
So,
gonna give you the floor for a bit. What did you think?
um, well, okay. So, firstly, I didn't really know what to expect. So, Porcupine Tree, you may remember at university, I used to hang around with some people, and they really liked Porcupine Tree.
Mm.
But I
Well, I
never,
mean, in a way, I was one of them. I just
I
never
suppose,
really.
yeah,
I mean, I know that I distinctly remember you came back and said, "Oh, I've really gotten into this band called Porcupine Tree," and I was sort of like, "Oh yeah, I've
yeah.
I've been
When
a
I
fan
said
of
that,
them
what I meant
for
was somebody
years."
played it, and I didn't
Oh
notice
right, yeah, okay,
because I really didn't take notice of much music back then.
Hmm,
Um,
sure.
but no, but so I don't know. All I knew was this guy Steve Wilson. He was kind of multi-instrumentalist, and I think I was under the impression that he recorded all the parts separately himself, or maybe hired
I
session musicians
don't
when they toured
think
it live. I'm not quite sure if that's
I
true.
don't think that's the case for
Ah,
Porcupine Tree, but I know he is. He's the primary songwriter.
yeah,
I think uh, I think Gavin Harrison, who's the drummer, and I forget the other guitarist's name, but they compose their parts for the songs that Steve Wilson has written. I
mm,
think,
okay.
but yeah.
Yeah, and I'd heard all this stuff about Steve Wilson that he was quite an eccentric guy, or maybe dare I say pretentious as well. I know he
Well, yeah, we can. I've got a few comments on. I mean, I wouldn't call him a controversial figure, but he's been known
yeah,
to uh, have the odd annoying opinion, particularly on styles of music that I
yeah.
am very much a fan of. So I'll talk about that
Oh,
later.
okay. And famously didn't like the iPod, or doesn't like the iPod.
Oh well, I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Um,
So I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I don't know. I was a bit apprehensive going in because I kind of thought, oh, is this going to be, you know, 10 really long songs that are really hard to get into? But I listened
Yeah,
to it
yeah,
and
yeah.
immediately it struck a chord with me. I really
Nice,
liked this
nice.
album. I thought musically it was accomplished and it was varied and complex, but it was also quite trippy and trance-like as well.
Mm,
Especially the lyrics as well. They were, the vocal was quite trance-like, I thought.
mm.
And I kind of thought, in some parts, sorry, I'm not a musician, I'm not a music expert, but I kind of thought in parts it sounded a little bit like Dream Theater, but then also
I
there were
would
all
say
sorts,
so. Yeah.
yeah, and but also there seemed to be all sorts of other influences as well. I kind of thought, maybe people would disagree, but sometimes when I listen to something, another artist pops in my head and there's a bit which I think, oh, that reminds me of them. But something like someone like Brian Eno, I thought in certain parts,
Mm.
even certain Britpop in certain parts, because there was a song which was a bit more mellow and acoustic. I think track number 2 of The New Day. I kind of thought that was a bit more,
Yeah.
um, well, not exactly like Britpop, but that kind of thing almost. And it was interesting because I thought he was clearly trying to experiment with music, but at the same time, I really thought he wanted to make it listenable as well. And I thought it was very listenable, experimental but
Yeah.
listenable. Um, and I think I liked every track. And it almost, to
Cool.
me, kind of bridged the gap between, metal fans and perhaps more pop fans. Or would you agree with that? Or
I would definitely agree with that.
yeah,
I think there's a lot in what you've described there.
yeah,
I mean, in a weird way, like I've almost, I've always kind of, I got into Porcupine Tree because of that tag, that progressive metal
yeah,
tag. And I didn't know much about the genre at the time. I just knew that I liked the band Dream Theater, that I
mm,
think a lot of people who are into metal hear, and then and that kind of puts them on a sort of like, oh, I like this progressive metal thing.
mm,
But immediately, when I heard the album In Absentia, they didn't sound anything like Dream Theater or
mm.
any other band of that genre, really.
Okay.
And when you sort of said there's almost a kind of like indie Brit,
Oh,
almost kind of
Radiohead,
like,
even.
yeah, exactly, yeah. There's I've always sort of thought of them as like a weird cross between the Verve and Opeth.
Yeah.
There's and I have it on, as far as I know, um, Steve Wilson actually wasn't into heavy metal or metal
Okay.
music at all, really, and quite long into Porcupine Tree's career, and their sort of tenure, and it was only after meeting and sort of talking about music and eventually becoming friends with Michael Akerfeld, who
Mm.
is the songwriter of Opeth, that he started to have more of an appreciation for it and incorporate heavier riffs
Yeah.
into their songs. So there's just a few things I've got written down here. Yeah, I
Yeah.
too am a big fan of this album. I It really struck a chord with me. I haven't been keeping up with Steve Wilson's solo
Mm.
output, not out of dislike or anything, but just I don't know. I just lost track of it really.
Yeah.
And Steve Wilson has been one of my favorite artists for a long time, since hearing them back when I heard In
Yeah.
Absentia many years ago. Particularly his stuff with Porcupine Tree and Blackfield. And this album really took me back to what I liked about those those albums. I think
Mm.
I forget the name of the song. Let me look it up. There's one song called "The Rat's Return" that I think has got a
Yes.
stonking riff. Like
Mm.
I the it just yeah just a very just a very heavy, very rhythmically interesting uh riff there that is, reminiscent of Dream Theater
Mm.
in a way. If you were to tell Steve Wilson that, I think he would be very offended.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there's and sort of get to this a bit later, but he's let me just look, not Porcupine Tree, come on,
Porcupine Tree.
yeah. Closure, continuation, tracks. I think
Now,
I'm thinking of Chimera's Wreck. The lyrics on that I thought were particularly kind of hitting, kind of talking about depression and
yeah.
suicidal thoughts, and is reminiscent of there's an incredibly touching song on one of Porcupine Tree's earlier albums, which was called Stupid Dream.
Okay.
The song is called Even Less, and I think this song had that. Even Less has some of my favorite lyrics of any song
Yeah.
ever, basically, and it kind of, it hit that same kind of angsty chord with me,
Okay.
even now as a totally, well-adjusted 30-year-old contributor of society who doesn't have time for such emotional nonsense. But yeah, it was, I would say it's a return to form. I don't think
Yeah.
that would be entirely fair, because his solo stuff is meant to be very good. I just haven't listened to it.
No. Okay.
But basically, as I was saying before, Steve Wilson has been known to annoy metal fans like myself with comments like "shred guitar isn't music" and "modern metal bands don't sound heavy," which I've seen his videos on, where he's being interviewed for a
Yeah.
channel, and he goes, these are the sort of clickbait headings, and he goes into a bit more of into a bit more detail on those opinions.
Mm.
I mean, he explains his reasoning. It doesn't really do anything for me. I mean, it's
Mm.
still saying, oh, shredding lots of complicated guitar solos is not music, because it's all just playing fast for the sake of it,
Yeah.
and it's just like, no, it's not. Like, it's just such an old-fashioned, outdated argument, I find. But despite this, I hope he never changes, because I think it's this attitude, um, and coming from a completely different school of thought with very different influences, like you mentioned, like maybe some poppier influences, maybe some Brian Eno influences,
Yeah.
um, maybe even some indie influences, or we mentioned post-punk earlier. That
Mm.
seemed like the kind of thing that would interest him more
Yeah.
than, say, some other contemporary metal bands who are probably influenced by other styles of music.
I'm guessing
Um,
he's not a Metallica fan then.
well, I don't know. I mean, all I really know is that, have you listened? How much Porcupine Tree have you listened to?
Do you know what? Actually, uh, sitting down and listening to something, this is probably the only thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, if you enjoyed this, I would definitely.
Yeah.
I think my first point of recommendation would be Stupid Dream.
Okay.
I think that is when some of the heavier elements were starting to creep into their sound, but not so
Yeah.
much. And then I would recommend In Absentia and Deadwing,
Yeah.
which are, also just favorite albums of mine.
Okay.
But their style has just changed so much over the years. They've
Mm.
One of their very early, I think it's considered more of an EP, but it's basically an album because it's 40 minutes long,
Yeah.
is an instrumental album where each song is over 10 minutes long,
Okay.
and the the lyrics aren't really lyrics. It's just people describing their different experiences while being on LSD, and it's very Pink Floyd inspired, I guess you'd
Okay.
say. There's a lot of uh, I don't know. I want to say stuff like Tangerine Dream, but that probably isn't really very accurate.
Oh,
It's obviously influenced by a lot of psychedelic music that I don't listen to,
right. Okay.
but
Okay.
it is completely different from anything else they've done, and that's the kind
Mm,
of stuff that they were doing at that stage in
yeah.
their, and eventually they sort of settled on this kind of sound, which I think is um, summed up quite nicely in Closure Continuation.
Yeah.
But then, as you said, even that has a lot of different influences
Yeah.
reflected in it. So basically, to sort of summarize what I was saying earlier, like I think Steve Wilson as a songwriter is really a really healthy figure to have in both progressive and heavy music,
Mm,
because he's different. You know,
yeah.
he's unashamedly different and has a different approach to things.
Yeah.
And
I get the impression he's a true like audiophile, and
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. If I'd say, if you're interested at all, track down some interviews with him where,
Yeah.
with of just him talking about music.
Mm,
I think you'd probably get a lot out of it.
yeah. Um, and there were times actually where it was quite atmospheric and like ambient. And
Oh
I
yeah.
actually, even though I like the heavy stuff would kick in, and it almost took me by surprise, and I almost kind of
Yes. Yeah.
ever so it's going to sound a bit harsh, but ever so slightly disappointed that it didn't stick with the ambient stuff. But having said
Oh
that,
really?
I did like the heavy stuff as well. Um,
Well,
but yeah,
I kind of feel like, and this is something I like about a lot of progressive metal bands, is that sort of dynamic when you have
yeah,
more, when you have softer parts. Oh, excuse me. When you have more ambient parts, it makes the heavier parts sound heavier. I
mm,
mean, so like, can you, like, if you like um I don't suppose you listen to much like deathcore, but like a lot of those songs are just heavy all the way through, and it's like like a wall of sound basically, and
right, yeah,
it's like brutal, uh, but there's not a lot of dynamic to it, and you
yeah.
can really make the heavier parts sound heavier if it's juxtaposed with a softer part right before it.
Oh,
um,
interesting.
Make
So
it be more
emphasizes it, I
impactful,
suppose.
maybe emphasize it. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. Um,
Yeah, and
so
I
yeah,
can I can definitely see. I was going to call it Brian Wilson then,
Brian
Steve
Wilson.
Wilson.
He probably likes Brian Wilson too.
Yeah, but I can definitely, I sort of thought, oh, he should be doing film soundtracks, or I can, surprised he hasn't done film
Yeah,
soundtracks in the way like Tom York or what's that other one, Johnny Greenwood and
Johnny
Brian Eno
Greenwood.
have as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that could be quite interesting if he did a score for something.
But perhaps I think if that was something that he was interested in, he would probably go ahead and do it.
Mm, yeah.
Um, yeah, if you are interested in any further recommendations by either Porcupine Tree or like I say, another band that he was in, Blackfield. They're not even all that heavy actually, Blackfield, but just great, really well written songs. I can hook you up with some stuff, and that's
You make it
not a
sound like I'm
really
doing my
complicated.
metal drug dealer.
Yeah, that's not a really complicated euphemism for drugs there, I promise.
Yeah, but actually, no, I really liked it. And the only thing I would say I didn't like, sometimes I don't like it when the songs go on too long, but actually, there were some songs which were about
Oh,
eight. I know
oh,
you
I
like a big
can't
long
disagree
song,
with you
don't
more.
you?
I love a long
I
song.
know.
Yeah.
And some of the songs were 8, 9 minutes, but they never dragged. And actually, there were quite a lot of songs which were about 3 or 4 minutes. So I think for me,
Mm,
that, yeah, kept it going and kept my interest as well.
cool. Yeah, no, I agree, certainly.
And in fact, I did think, I thought, I really like this. And if I had time, I would have rushed out to a record store and bought it on CD. And I think I will, just because
All right.
out of 10, solid 8, possibly even a 9.
Yeah, I think I'd give it a 9. I think there
Yeah,
was just I think I'd give it a 9, almost kind of because it had that real nostalgic edge. Like it really took me back to being 16, 17,
yeah,
16 or 7 years old, 16 or 17 years old when I first got into Porcupine Tree, and just it being
yeah.
um with a lot of bands I was getting into around that time, just a real breath of fresh air. Like I mean, like I didn't really knew I liked music until I heard some of these bands, of which Porcupine Tree were one.
Oh,
Um,
right.
so yeah, there's that added nostalgic edge that for
Mm.
me like bumps it up from an 8 to a 9, I'd say.
And also, I didn't realise he's from Hemel Hempstead.
He is from Hemel Hempstead. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's I used to sort of say, oh, he's the pride of Hertfordshire, but is Hemel Hempstead really in Hertfordshire?
it is. Yeah.
It is, yeah. So him and Aquasplash, the big swimming pool, are the
Yes.
two best things to come out of Hemel Hempstead.
Yeah. And Aquasplash is no more. So, Steve Wilson has stood the
Oh,
test of time.
yeah. I bet he was responsible for that. I bet he didn't want to be
Yeah.
overshadowed by it. It's like, I think I'm going to, I think I'm going to pull the plug on this Aquasplash.
I mean,
Aquasplash doesn't make real music. People go down those slides too fast.
well, I mean, he seems like the
That's
type
not
of person
fun.
that would try and record an
Yeah.
album going down the space bowl or something. So
Going down
maybe
the space bomb.
maybe that was a health and safety issue. So, he was responsible for it closing.
uh, I'm trying to think of something funny to say to that, but I think the image is almost funny enough by itself, really.
Yeah.
It, it was a pool that I couldn't reach. It's, he's just pouring at the windows on the outside as Aquasplash is being demolished. I have a bit of a random tangent, but I remember
Yeah.
the last time I went to Aquasplash, I bought
Mm.
the film Set 7 on DVD.
All right.
And so you remember when I was always going on about that film. Um,
Yeah, I
I
think I remember
I just
vaguely.
I just remember I just remember I was like 14 or something. I was way too young to be watching a film like that. But I went to the HMV, bought
Yeah.
it, and then went tag was Splash. And I just remember thinking when I was like waiting on the slide, oh, I'm gonna watch the shit out of that film when I get back. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to watch that horrible film about, serial killers and Gwyneth Paltrow getting her head chopped off. Like, it's there's just a strange memory I have.
Okay.
Um, in case you wanted to know about that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
That's an
all right.
that's an
Yeah.
anecdote.
That
uh,
is.
um,
Yeah. That's. But you already
yeah.
knew. You already knew about the Gwyneth Paltrow head in the box thing before you
No,
saw
no, I
it.
didn't. I didn't.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, I didn't. I didn't. I'm just retroactively.
Okay.
Uh, I hope I
Yeah.
haven't spoiled that film for anyone, but I mean, it
I
has
know. I
been
was going to
out for
say we
20.
should put a spoiler
It
alert
has
there.
been out for 20 years, so
Yeah.
well, I'll just edit it out of the thing. Well, do you want to wrap it there? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's. Yeah.
I think that's oh, actually, just before we go, I've got two ideas for maybe
Mm.
what we could call this show in the
Sure.
future.
Hit me with it.
Um, okay, so here's the first one: earbuds,
Haha,
because we're
earbuds. Oh,
we're
what? Because like we're buds, and like they're like those ear things that you listen to music on.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Okay, that's
Let,
cool. I
let,
quite like
I've
that.
just
That
got
made me.
I've just got a horrible feeling that there might be a podcast called that already.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
welcome to Earbuds Podcast Collective. Oh no. No, I don't think there is.
We could have one a bit like Squitty Politti, but something else, some other random
Yeah.
Italian
Or we
phrase.
we can just put two dots above the U so it can be ear boobs
Ear
or something.
buds. Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
well, okay. That one sounds like it's a winner for the time being.
Okay. Yeah.
In case that falls through, how about Us Pod? Because it's like iPod,
Us.
which people listen to music on, but it's us. It's a podcast by us. And I thought that maybe our catchphrase could be, "There's no I in Us Pod."
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
That didn't seem quite as.
You're going to be honest, not as good as earbuds,
Yeah.
but I see the
Okay.
logic.
Yeah.
People read it as US
Oh,
pods,
maybe. Yeah. Yeah. They might think that we're, I don't know, like
American, or talking about
Alex
American things.
Jones and yeah, sort of like wearing MAGA hats and things and sort of
Alex
being like,
Jones.
oh, yeah, the conspiracy theorist guy.
Oh, I thought you meant from the One Show. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know who that is. No, I mean, oh God, yeah, we're 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 very uh, we have very different sort of cultural filters. I think like he's Alex Jones, a screaming American conspiracy man who thinks that everything's a conspiracy and everyone's trying to like overthrow the the rightful US Constitution and things. And anyway, yeah, we don't want
Oh,
to be
right.
confused with him.
Okay. Yeah. No, Alex
Yeah,
Jones.
what I mean is, US pod sounds like the kind of thing that he might call one of his podcasts.
Ah, right. Okay. Got it. Yeah, we wouldn't want them to think that, would we? No.
No, we wouldn't. So earbuds is probably better.
Okay,
He
that's
wouldn't
good.
have a
Yeah.
he wouldn't have a he wouldn't have a podcast called Earbuds. It's too friendly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can research that
Earbuds.
and see if it's been taken
Yes.
already.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's looking pretty good. I think I'm going to yeah. Should we go with that one for now, unless either
Yeah.
of us thinks of something a bit better?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Nice.
Okay. Earbuds. I like it. We are the earbuds.
Yes, and we're the earbuds, and here's some music to play you out, possibly from one of the albums we talked about. Um, if not, I'll stick some stock music on.
Yeah.
And
Or,
yes, and
or here's Yellow by
sorry,
Coldplay.
yeah, my favorite song.
Do you know what?
Anyway.
Oh, this is really annoying. I really hate Coldplay. And there was a song I heard recently and I kept hearing it around and I thought, oh, I quite like that. It's something like, it sounded like This Girl Is Electric or something.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
I finally put the lyrics in. And then to my horror, I saw it was a Coldplay song. So
Oh
I had been
no.
liking a Coldplay song without realizing. But then as soon as I realized it was Coldplay, and then I imagined that stupid Chris Martin singing it, put me right
Hmm.
off.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you don't like it anymore then?
Well, that guy just oh,
Yeah, he's
and
irritating, isn't he?
as heck, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh no, we've only
All
got
right then.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, here's Yellow by Coldplay. I think that's 5 minutes long. And
Okay.
yeah, good. Goodbye and see
Yeah.
you next time.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for listening. All of you.
Thank you.